What if I told you that helping a poor lonely beggar on the streets of Chicago can make you a millionaire? Would you believe me? Well, that was exactly what happened to Janelle Brooks, a poor black girl in Chicago who gave her last $10 to a beggar only to realize that she wasn't actually helping a beggar. Before we continue, tell us exactly where you are watching from in the comments section. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, subscribe now and turn on the notification bell. We post quality stories here daily just for you. The black SUV sat outside the apartment building like a predator waiting for prey. Its tinted windows reflected the gray Chicago morning, and two men in dark suits stood beside it, their presence drawing nervous glances from everyone who passed. Inside apartment 4C, 17-year-old Janelle Brooks stood frozen at her bedroom window, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears.
Janelle, baby?
Who are those men? Her mother's voice cracked from the doorway. Renee Brooks clutched her worn bathrobe tighter, her eyes wide with the kind of fear that came from years of living on the edge, where any knock on the door could mean eviction, arrest, or worse. Janelle's hands trembled as she gripped the windowsill. She had no idea who they were or what they wanted, but in neighborhoods like theirs, black SUVs only meant trouble. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had she done something wrong? Was this about yesterday? About the money? One of the suited men looked up at their window, and Janelle stumbled backward. I don't know, Mama. I swear I don't know. But somewhere deep in her chest, beneath the fear, something else stirred. Something that whispered this moment was connected to yesterday morning, to the subway station, to the decision that had left her stomach empty all day. The decision that might have just changed everything. 24 hours earlier, Janelle had stood in that same spot, counting the crumpled bills in her hand. A 5 and 5 ones. $10. It was all she had until her mother got paid on Friday, which meant it was all they had. The math was simple and cruel. She needed $3 for the bus to school and back, which left $7 for food. $7 to stretch across breakfast, lunch, and maybe something for dinner if she was smart about it. The apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the old refrigerator and her mother's soft snoring from the couch. Renee had come home at 3 a.m. from her second shift at the hospital cafeteria, and she'd be up again at 9 to clean houses in Lincoln Park. Janelle had learned not to wake her, not to ask for anything, not to add to the weight her mother already carried. She tucked the bills into her jacket pocket and stepped out into the November cold. The walk to the Red Line station took 15 minutes, past boarded-up storefronts and groups of men huddled around barrel fires. She kept her head down and her pace steady, the way her mother had taught her. Don't look scared. Don't look rich. Don't look like a target. The subway platform smelled like urine and wet concrete. Morning commuters clustered near the heated waiting area, their faces buried in phones, everyone locked in their own world of problems. Janelle found her usual spot near the stairs, away from the crowds, and waited for the northbound train that would take her to school. That's when she saw him. He sat on the ground near the entrance, his back against the grimy wall, shaking despite the layers of dirty clothes piled on his thin frame. His cardboard sign was barely legible, the marker faded and smeared. Anything helps. God bless. A plastic cup sat in front of him, empty except for a few pennies. Janelle had seen him before. Everyone had. He'd been at this station for weeks, maybe months. Most people walked past without looking. Some muttered about junkies and freeloaders. A few dropped change, but not many. Not anymore. The city had hardened everyone, turned compassion into a luxury people couldn't afford. But this morning was different. This morning, as Janelle watched, a man in an expensive coat stopped, looked at the beggar, and laughed. Actually laughed, then said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Get a job, buddy. Nobody's falling for the act anymore." A woman nearby giggled nervously. Someone else shook their head, and the man on the ground just pulled his knees tighter to his chest and closed his eyes. Janelle felt something hot and sharp twist in her stomach. She'd been hungry before. She'd felt invisible before. She knew what it was like when the world looked at you and decided you weren't worth their time. Her hand moved to her pocket, finding the $10. "Don't be stupid," a voice in her head whispered. "You need that money. You're already hungry. Your mama's already struggling.
You can't save everyone. But her feet were already moving, carrying her across the platform. The man didn't open his eyes until she crouched down beside him. Up close, she could see he was older than she'd thought, maybe 60, with gray stubble on his hollow cheeks and hands that trembled from something more than just cold. "Sir," she said softly. His eyes opened, and for a second, Janelle forgot how to breathe. They were clear and sharp, not glazed like she'd expected, not empty. They looked at her like he actually saw her. Not through her, not past her, but really saw her. "Yes, child?" His voice was rough, but gentle. Janelle pulled out the $10. Her last $10. The only thing standing between her and complete emptiness. She held it out to him. "Here." The man stared at the money, then at her. "I can't take that." "Yes, you can." "You sure you can spare it?" Janelle wasn't sure at all. But she nodded anyway. "You need it more than me." A lie. They needed it equally. But something about the way he was shaking, about the emptiness in his cup, about the cruelty of that man's laughter, made her decision feel less like choice and more like necessity. The beggar took the money with trembling fingers. "What's your name, Janelle?" "Janelle Brooks." "Janelle Brooks," he repeated slowly, like he was memorizing it. "Why would you do this?" She shrugged, suddenly embarrassed. The train was coming. She could hear it rumbling in the tunnel. "Because somebody should. Because you're a person. You didn't have to, I know." The train burst from the tunnel, filling the station with noise and wind. Janelle stood up, her knees creaking, already regretting and not regretting in equal measure. The man's eyes followed her. "God bless you, Janelle Brooks," he called over the screech of brakes. "You won't be forgotten." She waved awkwardly and ran for the doors as they opened. Inside the train car, she found a seat and pressed her forehead against the cool window, her stomach already growling. She'd just given away her food money, her bus money, everything. But as the train pulled away from the station, she looked back and saw the man still watching her, the $10 bill pressed against his chest like a treasure. And despite everything, despite the hunger already gnawing at her belly, Janelle smiled. She had no idea that decision would change her life. She had no idea that the man on the platform was not what he seemed. She had no idea that 24 hours later, she'd be standing at her window, watching a black SUV and wondering if kindness was about to cost her more than just $10. School was its own special kind of torture on an empty stomach. Janelle made it through first period English by drinking water from the fountain and chewing on a pencil eraser. By third period geometry, her head was pounding and the numbers on the board blurred together like alphabet soup. Mrs. Chen noticed her slumped over her desk and sent her to the nurse, who took one look at her and asked when she'd last eaten. "Breakfast," Janelle lied. The nurse, a kind woman named Patricia, who'd seen too many hungry kids to be fooled, gave her a granola bar from her desk drawer and told her to come back if she felt dizzy. Janelle ate it slowly, making it last, knowing it was all she'd get until she figured something else out. Lunch period was the worst. The cafeteria smelled like grease and industrial cheese, making her stomach cramp with want. She sat at her usual table in the corner, the one where the scholarship kids and the almost invisibles congregated, and tried not to watch other people eat. "Yo, Janelle." Marcus slid into the seat across from her, his tray loaded with pizza, fries, and a brownie. "You not eating? Not hungry? Bullshit. You're always hungry." Marcus was her oldest friend, the only person at Andrew Jackson High who knew exactly how broke she was because he was exactly as broke. "What happened?" Janelle hesitated, then told him about the subway, the beggar, the $10. As she talked, Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to something close to anger. "Are you insane, Janelle? That was your money. Your only money. I know. And you just gave it to some random homeless dude. He needed it. We all need it," Marcus hissed, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "You think any of these people would do that for you? You think that man would have given you his last $10? I don't know. Maybe. maybe nothing. Girl, you got too big a heart for this world. That heart's gonna get you killed, or worse, it's gonna keep you poor forever. Janelle didn't have an answer for that. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe kindness was a luxury she couldn't afford. Maybe giving away that money made her stupid instead of good. But when she closed her eyes, she still saw the beggar's face, still heard him say, "You didn't have to," still felt the strange rightness of the choice, even if the consequences were painful. The rest of the day crawled by. In fifth period history, Mr. Peters droned on about the Gilded Age, while Janelle's stomach growled loud enough to make the girl next to her giggle. In seventh period English, they discussed the American dream, and Janelle wanted to laugh at the irony. The American dream was having enough money for bus fare and lunch, and she'd just given hers away to a stranger. But the real humiliation came during eighth period, right before final dismissal. Kyle Benson swaggered into study hall late, as always, his designer sneakers squeaking on the linoleum floor. Kyle was everything Janelle wasn't: rich, confident, cruel in the casual way of people who'd never had to worry about anything real. His father owned a chain of car dealerships, and Kyle made sure everyone knew it. He spotted Janelle hunched over her homework and grinned. That predatory smile that meant he'd heard something and was about to make her day worse. "Yo, Brooks," he called loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Is it true you gave money to a bum this morning?" The study hall went quiet. 20 pairs of eyes swiveled toward Janelle. She kept her head down, focusing on her worksheet. "I heard you gave him like $20. Kyle continued, moving closer. "That's so sweet. So charitable. Really living that poverty-to-poverty transfer, huh?" Someone laughed. Then someone else. Heat flooded Janelle's face. "Leave her alone, Kyle," Marcus said from across the room. "What? I'm complimenting her." Kyle stopped at Janelle's desk, leaning down so close she could smell his cologne. "I mean, when you're broke as hell and you still give money away, that's either real stupid or real desperate for karma points. Which one is it, Brooks?" Janelle's hands clenched into fists under the desk. "Neither. It's called being a decent person. You should try it." "Oh, she's got jokes." Kyle straightened up, addressing the room like a performer. "Decent person. That's rich. My dad says people like you stay poor because you make dumb choices. Like giving away money you don't have. Like thinking the universe gives a damn about being decent. Your dad sounds like an asshole," Janelle said quietly. The room gasped. Even Marcus looked shocked. Kyle's face went red, and for a second, Janelle thought he might actually hit her. Instead, he leaned down again, his voice dropping to a vicious whisper. "You're gonna be nothing, Brooks. You're gonna be exactly like your mama, working 3 jobs and still living in that roach motel you call home. And you know what? You're gonna deserve it for being so goddamn stupid." Then he walked away, and the bell rang, and everyone scattered before Janelle could respond. She sat there for a long moment, her eyes burning, her throat tight. Marcus came over and squeezed her shoulder but didn't say anything, because what was there to say? Kyle was cruel, but he wasn't entirely wrong. She had made a stupid choice, and stupid choices had consequences. Janelle walked home instead of taking the bus, a 3-mile trek through neighborhoods that got progressively rougher the closer she got to her building. By the time she climbed the stairs to apartment 4C, her feet ached and her head pounded, and she wanted nothing more than to collapse. Her mother was awake, stirring something on the stove that smelled like canned soup and hope. "Hey, baby. How was school?" "Fine. You eat lunch?" "Yeah." Another lie. But Renee was too tired to notice, or maybe she just chose not to. They ate the watery soup in silence, and Janelle went to bed early, her stomach still half empty, her mind racing. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that 12 blocks away, in an alley behind an abandoned warehouse, the man from the subway was no longer shaking. He stood straight now, his posture commanding, his eyes sharp as he spoke into a phone. "I found one," he said quietly. "A girl. Gave me everything she had without hesitation, without agenda. She's exactly what I've been looking for." The voice on the other end asked a question. Janelle Brooks, 17. South Side. Living in poverty, but rich in character. He paused, a small smile crossing his weathered face. Tomorrow, we change her life. Not with money, not yet. First, we test her again. We see if that kindness holds when it costs her even more. And if it does, then we give her everything. The man hung up and looked at the $10 bill still in his hand. He'd run this experiment for 3 years now, moving from city to city, sitting in subway stations and on street corners, watching how people reacted to someone in need. He'd been ignored, mocked, spat on, kicked. Thousands had passed him by. Dozens had given him change. But only a handful had given like Janelle, without hesitation, without weighing the cost, without expecting anything in return. Those were the ones worth investing in. Those were the ones who could change the world if given the chance. His name was Harrison Cole, and he was worth $8 billion. He'd made his fortune in tech and real estate, building an empire that stretched across 3 continents. But 6 years ago, his wife and daughter had died in a car accident, and the money had stopped meaning anything. The mansions felt empty. The yachts felt hollow. He'd realized, too late, that he'd spent so much time building wealth that he'd forgotten to build meaning. So he'd started this project, this experiment in humanity. He'd go into the world disguised as the people society ignored, and he'd watch. He'd see who stopped, who cared, who gave even when it cost them. And when he found someone truly worthy, someone like Janelle Brooks, he'd change their life in ways they couldn't imagine. But first, he had to be sure. First, he had to test her again, push her harder, see if that kindness was real or just a moment of weakness. Tomorrow morning would tell him everything he needed to know. Janelle woke to pounding on the door. Aggressive, insistent pounding that made her heart jump into her throat. She grabbed her phone. 7:47 a.m. Through her bedroom wall, she heard her mother gasp, heard her stumble from the couch where she'd fallen asleep after her shift. "Who is it?" Renee called, her voice shaky. The pounding continued. Janelle threw on her hoodie and crept to her bedroom door, peeking out into the main room. Her mother stood in front of the door, one hand on the chain lock, the other clutching her phone like a weapon. "Who's there?" Renee called again. "We're looking for Janelle Brooks," a male voice responded. Deep, professional, the kind of voice that didn't ask questions so much as expect answers. "We need to speak with her immediately." Renee's eyes found Janelle's across the room, wide with terror. In neighborhoods like theirs, men at your door this early meant police, CPS, eviction, or worse. And they were asking for her daughter by name. "What's this about?" Renee demanded. "We can't discuss that through a door, ma'am. Please open up." "You got a warrant?" "We're not police, ma'am. We represent a private party who needs to speak with your daughter about an incident yesterday morning." Yesterday morning. The subway. The beggar. Janelle's stomach dropped to her feet. Oh God. Had the man been part of some scam? Was she in trouble? Had that $10 somehow turned into something illegal? "Mama, it's okay," Janelle said, stepping forward even though every instinct screamed to hide. "I'll talk to them." "Baby, no." But Janelle was already at the door, her hand on the chain. She took a breath, said a prayer, and opened it. 2 men stood in the hallway, both in dark suits that probably cost more than her mother's monthly rent. One was white, 50s, with gray hair and an American flag pin on his lapel. The other was black, younger, with a shaved head and kind eyes that softened when he saw Janelle's terrified face. "Janelle Brooks?" the older one asked. "Yes. My name is Robert Kane. This is Dennis Howard. We work for Harrison Cole. Do you know that name?" Janelle shook her head. "Did you give money to a man yesterday morning at the Red Line subway station?" Yes. But it was just $10. I didn't do anything wrong, I swear. You're not in trouble," Dennis interrupted gently. "The opposite, actually. Mr. Cole would like to meet with you. Today. This morning, if possible." Renee pushed past Janelle, putting herself between her daughter and these strange men. "Who the hell is Harrison Cole, And why does he want to meet my daughter? Mr. Cole is a businessman and philanthropist, Robert said smoothly. He has a proposal for Janelle, a very generous proposal. But he'd like to discuss it in person. Proposal. Renee's voice rose. What kind of proposal? My daughter's 17 years old. She's not. Nothing inappropriate, Mrs. Brooks, I promise you. Mr. Cole simply wants to thank your daughter for her kindness yesterday and discuss some opportunities that might benefit your family. Robert pulled out a business card and handed it to Renee. This is all completely legitimate. You're welcome to look him up. You're also welcome to accompany Janelle to the meeting, of course. Renee stared at the card like it might explode. This is insane. People don't just show up at your door with mysterious proposals because your kid gave someone lunch money. They do when that kid gives away everything she has to a stranger without hesitation. Dennis said quietly. That's rare, Mrs. Brooks. Rarer than you might think. And Mr. Cole values that kind of character. Janelle's mind was spinning. This made no sense. $10 to a homeless man didn't equal men in suits at her door with proposals and talk of opportunities. Unless this was some kind of scam. Unless she was about to be trafficked or conned or... We understand your concern, Robert said, reading her expression. Which is why we're not asking you to go anywhere private. The meeting is at Cole Tower downtown, a public building with security. You can bring your mother. You can bring anyone you like. You can leave at any time. We're simply asking for 1 hour of your time. And if we say no, Renee asked, then we leave and you never hear from us again. Robert smiled. But I think you'll regret that decision, Mrs. Brooks. I really do. There was a long, tense silence. Janelle looked at her mother, saw the fear and confusion and desperate hope warring on her face. They were so broke, so tired, so beaten down by the world. If this was real, if there was even a chance it could help them, when? Janelle asked. Now, Robert said. Our car is waiting downstairs. And that's when Janelle looked out the window and saw the black SUV. The ride downtown was surreal. Janelle sat in the back seat next to her mother, both of them silent and stiff, while Dennis drove and Robert made small talk about the weather like they hadn't just upended these people's entire morning. The SUV was nicer than any car Janelle had ever been in. All leather seats and tinted windows and a smell like new money. Renee kept checking her phone, pulling up news articles about Harrison Cole. Her eyes kept getting wider with each article she read. $8 billion, she whispered to Janelle. This man is worth $8 billion. That doesn't make sense, Mama. Why would someone worth $8 billion care about $10? I don't know, baby. I don't know. The SUV pulled up to a tower of glass and steel in the Loop, one of those buildings that looked like it could cut clouds in half. The words Cole Industries stretched across the top floor in letters 10 feet tall. Security guards nodded at Robert as they entered the lobby, and Janelle realized with growing disbelief that this was real. This was actually happening. They took a private elevator to the 48th floor. Janelle's ears popped twice. Her mother gripped her hand so tight it hurt. When the doors opened, they stepped into a reception area that looked like something from a movie. All marble floors and modern art, and floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the city into a miniature model below them. A woman in a sleek pantsuit greeted them with a professional smile. Mr. Cole is waiting in the conference room. Right this way, please. They walked down a hall that seemed to stretch forever. Janelle caught glimpses of offices filled with people in expensive clothes, typing on computers that probably cost more than her entire education. She felt like an alien, like everyone could see she didn't belong here, like at any moment someone would realize the mistake and throw them out. The conference room had a table that could seat 20 people and windows that looked out over Lake Michigan. But Janelle's eyes went immediately to the man standing at those windows with his back to them. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with gray hair and broad shoulders under a perfectly tailored suit. Something about his posture felt familiar, but Janelle couldn't place why. Then he turned around, and her breath caught in her throat. Those eyes. She knew those eyes. "Hello, Janelle," the beggar from the subway said with a small smile. "Thank you for coming." Renee gasped. Janelle felt her knees go weak. This couldn't be real. The shaking, dirty man from the subway station couldn't be this put-together billionaire standing in front of her. It was impossible. "I don't understand," Janelle whispered. "Please, sit." Harrison Cole gestured to the chairs. "I know this is overwhelming. Let me explain." They sat. Harrison remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression gentle but serious. "6 years ago, I lost my wife and daughter in an accident. For a long time after that, I didn't see the point of any of this." He gestured at the office, the building, the empire around them. "I had more money than I could spend in 100 lifetimes, but I couldn't buy back the only things that mattered. I couldn't buy meaning. I couldn't buy purpose. I was wealthy and completely empty." He paused, his eyes distant for a moment. "So I started an experiment. Every few months, I disguise myself as someone homeless, someone society has decided doesn't matter, and I go to public places. I sit and I watch how people treat me, how they react to someone in need. And I've learned something interesting. Most people, even good people, don't help. They're too busy, too scared, too conditioned to look away. And those who do help usually give the bare minimum. Some change, maybe $1. Enough to make themselves feel good, but not enough to actually cost them anything." Harrison's eyes focused back on Janelle, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. "But every once in a while, I meet someone different. Someone who gives not from their excess, but from their necessity. Someone who sees a person hurting and helps even when it hurts them too. Those are the people worth knowing. Those are the people who give me hope that maybe humanity hasn't completely lost its way." "I gave you $10, Janelle said, her voice small. "That's it. That's not special. That $10 was everything you had," Harrison replied. "You gave me your food money, your bus fare, everything you needed to get through the day. You made yourself vulnerable to help a stranger. Do you know how rare that is?" Janelle didn't answer. Her mother was crying silently beside her, tears streaming down her face. Harrison pulled out a chair and sat across from them, his posture shifting from billionaire to just a man. "I've run this experiment in 7 cities over 3 years. Thousands of people have passed me by. Maybe 200 have given me something. Of those 200, only 12 have given me more than spare change. And of those 12, you're only the third who gave me everything. What happened to the other 2? Renee asked, her voice thick with tears. "I changed their lives," Harrison said simply. "One was a veteran living in his car. I set him up with housing, got him the medical care he needed, helped him start a business. He now employs 15 people. The other was a single father working 3 jobs. I paid off his debts, put his kids through school, gave him the capital to open the restaurant he'd always dreamed of. It's one of the most successful businesses in Portland now." He leaned forward, his eyes locked on Janelle. "I don't do this because I feel guilty about my wealth. I do this because I believe the people who give when they have nothing are the people who will do the most good if they have something. I invest in character, not just capital. And Janelle, you have the kind of character I've been searching for. What are you saying?" Janelle whispered, "I'm saying I want to help you. I'm saying I want to invest in your future, in your family's future. Not as charity, but as a believer in who you are and who you could become." The room spun. Janelle gripped the edge of the table, trying to process what she was hearing. This morning she'd woken up poor and hungry. Now she was sitting in a billionaire's office being told she was special because she'd been kind. "Why didn't you just tell me who you were?" she asked. "At the subway. Why the disguise?" "Because I needed to see the truth of you," Harrison said. "If you'd known I was rich, your help would have been calculated. But you helped me thinking I was nobody, thinking you'd never see me again, thinking there was nothing in it for you. That's the kind of goodness that matters. The kind that costs you something. So what now?" Renee asked, her voice stronger now, protective. "What exactly are you proposing?" Harrison smiled. First, immediately, I'd like to settle your family's debts. Rent, bills, medical costs, whatever you're behind on. I'd like to move you to safe housing in a better neighborhood. I'd like to set up a trust fund for Janelle's education. Any college she wants, full ride, no loans. And I'd like to offer her a mentorship. Every month, we meet. We talk about her goals, her challenges, her future. I introduce her to people in industries she's interested in. I help her build the life she deserves. He paused, letting that sink in. But more than money, I want to teach her something important. That kindness isn't weakness. That giving isn't losing. That the world tried to make her cruel by making her poor, and she refused. That's worth investing in. That's worth protecting. Janelle couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This was impossible. Things like this didn't happen to girls like her. Life didn't work this way. You didn't give away $10 and get a fairy tale ending. This is real. She finally managed to ask. This isn't some prank or test or, it's real. Harrison said gently, as real as your kindness yesterday, as real as the choice you made to help someone even when you couldn't afford it. I'm not giving you a handout, Janelle. I'm giving you what you gave me, a chance. You gave me a chance to eat yesterday. I'm giving you a chance to build a life. Fair trade, as far as I'm concerned. Renee broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands. Janelle put an arm around her mother, her own eyes burning. Around them, through the windows, the city sparkled in the morning sun, indifferent and beautiful and full of possibility. There's one condition, Harrison said, and Janelle's heart lurched. Of course there was a condition. There was always a catch. What? She asked warily. You keep being you. You don't let money change your character. You don't forget what it felt like to have nothing, and you don't stop helping people even when it costs you. You stay kind. You stay real. Because the moment you become someone who looks away from people hurting, the moment you forget where you came from, this all ends. I need to know I'm investing in someone who will use this opportunity to lift others up, not just herself. I can do that, Janelle said immediately. I promise, I can do that. I believe you, Harrison said. That's why we're here. The next hour passed in a blur of paperwork and phone calls and surreal conversations about bank accounts and moving companies and school transfers. Robert and Dennis appeared with folders full of documents, explaining each one patiently while Renee read every word with shaking hands. By the time they finished, the sun was high in the sky, and Janelle's entire life had been reorganized. Their rent was paid through the end of the year. Their back debts were settled. A new apartment was being arranged in a neighborhood with good schools and low crime. The trust fund was established, managed by a team of financial advisors who would help Janelle navigate college applications and career planning. And Harrison had given Renee his personal number with instructions to call if they needed anything at all. Why are you doing this? Janelle asked him as they prepared to leave. Really? Why? Harrison looked at her for a long moment. Because when my daughter was alive, she used to say she wanted to grow up and make the world better. She'd see someone struggling and immediately try to help. She was 6 years old and she understood something most adults never learn, that we're all connected, that helping others isn't optional, it's essential. When she died, I thought that kind of pure kindness died with her. But then I meet people like you, and I realize it's still out there. It's rare, but it exists. And every time I find it, I do everything in my power to protect it and nurture it, because the world needs more people like my daughter, more people like you. Janelle didn't know what to say to that. How do you respond when someone tells you that your kindness reminded them of their dead child? That your choice to give $10 had somehow healed a wound you didn't know existed? So she just said, "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for being worth seeing," Harrison replied. They rode the elevator back down to the lobby in silence. Outside, the black SUV was waiting, but it felt different now. Not threatening, but protective. Robert opened the door for them, and Janelle slid inside, her mother beside her, both of them stunned into quiet. As they pulled away from Cole Tower, Janelle looked back at the building and saw Harrison standing at one of those massive windows, a small figure against all that glass and steel, watching them leave. She raised a hand. He raised one back. "Did that really just happen?" Renee whispered. "I think so," Janelle whispered back. "All because you gave away $10. All because I gave away $10. They drove in silence for a few blocks. Then Renee started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound that was half joy and half disbelief. Janelle joined her, and soon they were both laughing so hard they couldn't breathe. Holding on to each other in the back of this expensive SUV, two poor women who'd just had their lives transformed by something as simple as kindness. But the story wasn't over. Because the next day, Janelle had to go back to school. Andrew Jackson High looked the same as it always had. Gray brick building with barred windows, metal detectors at the entrance, teachers who looked tired before first period even started. But Janelle felt different. She walked through those doors, knowing that everything had changed, that she had a future now, that the poverty that had defined her entire life was suddenly, impossibly over. She thought she could keep it quiet. She thought she could just go to class, finish the semester, and figure out her new life later. But word travels fast in places like this, especially word about mysterious black SUVs and missed school days and sudden changes in fortune. By lunch, everyone knew something was up. By eighth period, the rumors had mutated into wild speculation. Janelle had won the lottery. Janelle was a secret heiress. Janelle was being investigated for fraud. And Kyle Benson, never one to miss an opportunity to cause chaos, had decided to make Janelle's day hell. He found her at her locker after final bell, a crowd of his friends trailing behind him like remoras on a shark. Well, Kyle drawled, leaning against the locker next to hers. "If it isn't Saint Janelle, patron saint of poor decisions and stupid charity." Janelle kept packing her bag, refusing to engage. "I heard you missed school yesterday," Kyle continued. "Some men came to your door. Men in suits. In a black SUV. That's pretty serious. You in trouble with the law, Brooks? Finally get caught stealing." "I've never stolen anything," Janelle said quietly. "Then, what were they there for? Why'd they pull you out of your Roach Motel and take you downtown?" "People are saying all kinds of things. Some think you're a snitch. Some think you're a criminal. Me? I think you're just a con artist who finally got caught." Marcus appeared at Janelle's side, his expression hostile. "Back off, Kyle, or what?" Kyle laughed. "You gonna defend your broke little girlfriend? Both of you are pathetic. You know what my dad says about people from your neighborhood? He says you're born failures. He says no amount of handouts will ever change the fact that some people are meant to be on top and some people are meant to serve them. And that's you, Brooks. That's your destiny. Serving people like me." Something inside Janelle snapped. Maybe it was the stress of the last 2 days. Maybe it was the weight of years of Kyle's cruelty. Maybe it was the fact that she knew something he didn't, that she had a secret that would devastate his smug worldview. She turned to face him fully, her eyes hard. "You're wrong," she said simply. "About what?" "About me. About my destiny. About everything." She closed her locker and shouldered her bag. "Those men yesterday? They worked for Harrison Cole. He's a billionaire. And he's decided to invest in me because I did something you could never do. I was kind when it cost me something. I gave away everything I had to help someone who needed it. And now my family's debts are paid. We're moving to a new apartment. I have a full scholarship to any college I want. And I have a mentor who's worth $8 billion. All because I gave $10 to a homeless man while you laughed at him." The hallway went silent. Kyle's smirk faltered. His friends looked at each other, uncertain. "You're lying," Kyle said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Look it up. Harrison Cole. Cole Industries. He runs an experiment where he tests people's kindness. I passed. You would have failed." She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "And you know what the funny thing is? Your dad's right, that some people are meant to be on top. He's just wrong about which people. It's not about money or status or where you're born. It's about character. It's about being someone worth investing in. And Kyle, you're not worth a damn. She walked away before he could respond, Marcus trailing behind her with a stunned expression. Behind them, the crowd exploded into whispers and pulled phones, everyone trying to verify her story, searching for Harrison Cole's name, connecting the dots. By the time Janelle made it outside, her phone was blowing up with messages from classmates she hadn't talked to in years. Everyone suddenly her friend, everyone wanting to know if it was true. She ignored them all and started the walk home, her heart pounding, half exhilarated and half terrified by what she'd just done. Did you really just tell Kyle Benson off using a billionaire as backup? Marcus asked, catching up to her. Yeah. That's the most badass thing I've ever seen. It was stupid. I shouldn't have said anything. Nah, it was perfect. He deserved it. They all deserved it. Marcus laughed, shaking his head. Man, I wish I'd seen his face. That racist prick finally got checked. They walked in silence for a block. Then Marcus said quietly, "It's really true? All of it? All of it? Because you gave away $10? Because I was kind when I didn't have to be." Marcus nodded slowly, processing. That's wild, Janelle. That's like something from a movie. I know. What are you gonna do now? Janelle thought about it. What was she going to do? She had opportunities now, possibilities she'd never imagined. She could go to college, could study anything, could become anyone. The limitations that had defined her entire life were suddenly gone. "I'm gonna keep being me," she said finally. "That's what Mr. Cole asked. That I don't change. That I stay kind, even to people like Kyle. Especially to people like Kyle." She smiled. "Because that's the test, right? Being kind to people who deserve it is easy. Being kind to people who don't is what makes it matter." Marcus looked at her like she was crazy. Maybe she was. But kindness had gotten her this far. She wasn't about to stop now. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. They moved to the new apartment in early December, a 2-bedroom place in a building with actual security and heat that worked, and appliances younger than Janelle. Her mother cried when she saw it, standing in the middle of the empty living room with sunlight streaming through clean windows, unable to believe this was theirs. School became easier once Janelle's story was verified. Some people were jealous, some were genuinely happy for her, but most were just confused by the whole thing. The idea that kindness could be rewarded so dramatically didn't fit into their understanding of how the world worked. In their experience, being kind got you taken advantage of, not lifted up. Kyle went quiet for a while, but about 2 weeks after their confrontation, his father's dealerships were investigated for fraud. Turned out Kyle's dad had been cooking the books, scamming customers with predatory loans and falsified contracts. The dealerships were shut down. Kyle's family fortune evaporated almost overnight. Janelle took no pleasure in it, even though part of her felt like it was karmic justice. When she saw Kyle in the hallway the day after the news broke, he looked smaller somehow, diminished and scared in a way she recognized from her own mirror. She thought about walking past him, about letting him feel what it was like to be invisible. Instead, she stopped. "I'm sorry about your family," she said quietly. Kyle looked at her with hollow eyes. "Why? I was awful to you. Because nobody deserves to lose everything. I told you that you deserved to lose everything. I said you'd always be nothing. I know. But I'm not you. And I'm not going to become you just because I can afford to now." She hesitated, then added, "If you need help, if your family needs anything, there are resources. Programs. I can give you some numbers." Kyle stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. Then he did something she'd never seen him do before. He cried. Right there in the hallway, tears streaming down his face, all his armor cracking. "I don't understand you," he choked out. "Why would you help me? Because somebody helped me when I had nothing. Because kindness is supposed to multiply, not disappear. Because you're still a person, Kyle, even if you've been a terrible one." She wrote down some information on a piece of paper, organizations that helped families in crisis, food banks, counseling services. She pressed it into his hand and walked away, leaving him standing there with tears on his face and hope where there had only been cruelty before. Marcus found her later, shaking his head in disbelief. "You're too good for this world, Janelle. You know that?" "No," she said. "I'm exactly as good as the world needs me to be. We all are. We just have to choose it." Christmas came, the first one where they didn't have to decide between presents and rent. Janelle bought her mother a new coat, warm and stylish, the kind of thing Renee would never have bought herself. Renee cried when she opened it, and they spent Christmas Eve in their warm apartment, eating food they didn't have to worry about affording, watching movies on a TV that actually worked. Harrison called on Christmas Day. "How are you adjusting?" he asked. "It's weird," Janelle admitted. "Good weird, but weird. I keep waiting for it to all disappear. It won't. As long as you stay true to who you are, this is permanent. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why do you really do this? And don't tell me it's just about your daughter. There's something else." There was a long pause. Then Harrison sighed. "You're perceptive. Okay, the truth, I spent 30 years building an empire by being ruthless. I stepped on people. I exploited workers. I cared more about profit than people. I told myself it was just business, that everyone did it, that you couldn't succeed without being willing to do whatever it took. And I became enormously successful and profoundly unhappy. When I lost my wife and daughter, I realized I'd built a kingdom on sand. That all my money couldn't buy back the things that mattered. That I'd spent my whole life being the kind of person I'd want my daughter to avoid." His voice got quieter. "So I'm trying to balance the scales. For every person I stepped on climbing to the top, I want to lift someone up. For every cruel decision I made, I want to fund an act of kindness. I can't undo who I was, but I can create something better for who I'll be remembered as." "That's beautiful," Janelle said softly. "It's selfish," Harrison corrected. "I'm trying to buy redemption, but if it helps people like you along the way, I'll take it." "You're wrong," Janelle said. "If it was selfish, you'd do it publicly. You'd slap your name on everything and make sure everyone knew how generous you were. But you do it quietly. You do it in disguise. That's not redemption, Mr. Cole. That's genuine change." Another long pause. Then, "Thank you, Janelle. I needed to hear that." They talked for another half hour about her college plans, about her mother's new job prospects, about the future that stretched out in front of them, bright and uncertain and full of possibility. When they hung up, Janelle felt something settle in her chest, a piece she hadn't known she was missing. Her mother came out of the kitchen with hot chocolate, the real kind with actual cocoa and whipped cream. "Everything okay?" Renee asked. "Yeah, Mama. Everything's perfect." And it was. Not because they had money now, though that helped. Not because they were out of danger, though that was a relief. But because Janelle had learned something fundamental about the world. That kindness wasn't weakness. That giving wasn't losing. That the universe sometimes did notice when you did the right thing, even when no one was watching. She thought about the beggar in the subway station, the one she hadn't known was a billionaire, the one she'd helped because it was right, not because it would pay off. She thought about Kyle, standing in the hallway with tears on his face, learning that cruelty had consequences and that mercy was still possible. She thought about her mother, sleeping soundly for the first time in years, no longer carrying the weight of survival on her shoulders. And she thought about the $10 that had changed everything. In the months that followed, Janelle started at a new school in their new neighborhood. She excelled, pulling straight A's for the first time in her life, now that she wasn't falling asleep from hunger or stress. She joined the debate team. She volunteered at a homeless shelter on weekends, serving food to people who looked just like Mr. Cole had looked that day on the subway, people society had decided didn't matter. Every person she served, she looked them in the eye and said, "You matter." Because she knew firsthand that you never knew who someone was or what they were capable of. You never knew if your kindness would be the thing that saved them. Harrison kept his promise about mentorship. Once a month, they met for dinner at a nice restaurant, and he'd introduce her to people who could help her future. College professors, business owners, non-profit leaders, people who had power and were willing to share it. He taught her about investing, about building wealth responsibly, about using money as a tool for good instead of a weapon for greed. But more than that, he taught her about character, about staying humble when success came, about remembering where you started even when you'd gone somewhere else, about lifting others as you climbed. Money amplifies, he told her during one of their dinners. It makes good people better and bad people worse. The key is to know who you are before you get it. You knew who you were, Janelle. You were kind when you were poor. That's why I trusted you with this opportunity. Because I knew money wouldn't corrupt you. How did you know? She asked. Because you gave away everything, he said simply. Someone who could do that wasn't motivated by accumulation. You were motivated by compassion. And compassion doesn't change just because your bank account does. By spring, Janelle had been accepted to 7 colleges. She chose Northwestern, close enough to home to help her mother, but far enough to grow. Full scholarship, no loans, no debt. The kind of opportunity she'd never have had without that $10, without that choice, without that moment of kindness that had transformed everything. On her last day at her old school, before transferring to finish her senior year at a school that could better prepare her for college, Janelle went back to the subway station where it had all started. She stood at the top of those stairs, looking down at the spot where Mr. Cole had sat, where she'd made the choice that changed her life. A different homeless person sat there now, a woman with a sleeping bag and a sign that said, "Hungry. Anything helps." Janelle pulled out her wallet. She had $100 in there, money Mr. Cole had given her for lunch and expenses. She took out a 20, then thought better of it, and took out 50. She crouched down beside the woman. "Hi," she said softly. "I'd like to help if I can." The woman looked up, her eyes suspicious and tired. "Why?" "Because someone helped me once. Because kindness is supposed to multiply. Because you matter." She pressed the money into the woman's hand. The woman stared at it, then at Janelle, tears welling in her eyes. "God bless you," she whispered. "He already has," Janelle said. "Now I'm trying to pass it on." She walked away with a lightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd had that day she'd given away her last $10. The feeling of having done the right thing, even when it cost her something. The feeling of being exactly who she wanted to be. Her phone buzzed. A text from Harrison. "Dinner next week. I have someone I want you to meet. Another person like you. Another person who gave everything." Janelle smiled. "I'll be there." Because that was the real gift Harrison had given her, she realized. Not the money, or the apartment, or the scholarship, though those were all wonderful. The real gift was the knowledge that she wasn't alone. That there were other people out there who believed kindness mattered, who gave when it cost them, who chose to be good even when the world made it hard. And maybe, just maybe, if enough of them found each other, if enough of them lifted each other up, they could change the world. It wouldn't happen overnight. It wouldn't happen through one billionaire's experiments or one girl's choice on a subway platform. But it would happen, person by person, dollar by dollar, moment by moment. The world would get a little bit better. All it took was someone willing to give their last $10 to a stranger. Someone willing to see people when the world taught you to look away. Someone willing to stay kind even when kindness seemed foolish. Someone like Janelle Brooks. She walked out of the subway station into the Chicago sunshine, her future bright ahead of her, her past no longer a weight, but a teacher. And in her heart, she carried the lesson that would define the rest of her life. That the things you give away are the things that truly matter. That loss can become gain in ways you never expect. That the universe is always watching, even when you think no one is. And that $10, given freely, could be worth more than any amount of money if it's given with the right heart. So, if you're reading this, if you're watching this, if you've made it this far in her story, ask yourself, what would you do? If you had your last $10 and you saw someone suffering, would you give it away? Would you choose kindness over comfort? Would you risk everything for someone you'd never see again? Because those choices matter. Those moments define us. And you never know when your kindness might change someone's life. You never know when that person you help might turn out to be exactly who you needed to meet. You never know when giving everything might be the best decision you ever made. Janelle didn't know. She just knew it was right. And that was enough. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling us about a time you chose kindness when it was hard. Because stories like Janelle's only matter if they inspire us to be better, to do better, to choose better. $10 changed one girl's life. What could your kindness change? There's only one way to find out. Choose kindness. Every single time. Even when it costs you. Especially when it costs you. That's when it matters most. Remember to tell us exactly where you are watching from. Like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thanks and see you in the next video.